I have a number of questions, but not yet. You know this. Oh, here, Zhigi, thank you. This is a true live event with questions from the floor. Yes. So you need a mic also because we need other people to hear us from online. Yes.
Usually speak so loudly that I don't need a mic. But
No, but they won't hear you in Sweden. If you
maybe it's a bit of a technical question, but looking at the map for AML issues, Estonia was light green while Lithuania was dark green. At the same time, the same slide had information on this big Danske Bank Estonia scandal. How come we can have such a situation?
So I guess this was for Eivilė.
Yeah, for Eivilė, yeah.
Thank you.
So indeed, we can say that our region was infamous for certain events that we had in money laundering, but I think we as a region are improving a lot and putting a lot of effort to clean our reputation, and actually we as Lithuania are doing that a lot, especially having in mind that we didn't have any issues, and that's, as I mentioned, that we as an association and as a sector are doing steps to establishing new anti-money laundering competence center and also promoting ourselves around the world in Europe and also talking with our US counterparts to explain the steps what we are doing to prevent this happening. But of course, the history is there, so we learned our lessons as a region and we are doing everything to prevent that.
Thank you. Some more questions? Yes, Žygis. Another Žygis? Yes. So.
Thank you. So my question maybe to Eivilė or Ava maybe could comment as well from the central banks. So we also heard that central banks are thinking about digital currencies or cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, but somehow we feel that traditional banks were a little bit conservative about this. So when do you think traditional banks will go to the cryptocurrency space? And then we'll be more open to that, because we heard that due to AML reasons, we are a little bit conservative and we are pushing the businesses out of their space.
Thank you. Great question. So who would like to start?
I could perhaps start, and so probably there are two issues. When we're talking about private, I would say private digital currencies, which is like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin. So that's something that regulation does not allow, at least in Lithuania, for the banks to work with. So for all the AML reasons, for transparency reasons, for all the good reasons and investor protection. But now talking about the central bank digital currency, of course, this is a completely different conversation. But as I also mentioned during my presentation, banks are also very cautious about around the world because there are, for now, more questions than answers. And as I mentioned, this financial stability is one of the questions. Another, loss of payment services, or sort of all the income from commission from the payment service. That's another question. Because if digital euro is going to become so popular and easy to use, so why would you use then say bank cards? So I think these two main issues that remain for now, and until we don't have the answers, I think that the banking sector is not going to be very sort of supportive for now.
If I may add, I can just say that banks already have their digital currencies, that is deposits that we issue. And this is the currency that we have and that we have to convert at par to the central bank money, which is euro in our case. So what is very new in the world is that digital currencies, the private digital currencies, they are not controlled in any way so far by the central bank. They are not at par convertible to euro, dollar, or so on, because in our traditional world, bank money is fully convertible by law into central bank money, and that's why banks just don't need another digital money that would be out of scope for regulation. So I guess that would be an answer, and CBDC therefore is needed to replace the cash, but also to target the digital currencies that so far are out of our banking industry. And that's where the fear is. For the digital money that banks already have, central banks have the answers for. Yeah, they have reserves and so on that we control.
Would you like?
Yeah, and I can comment from the banking side. So I can confirm that we are watching. We are constantly discussing on what's happening with the digital euro situation. But yeah, we still believe that the banking infrastructure as such will be needed even to service the digital euro. But of course, we have to look what kind of solution in the end is going to come. So we're looking cautiously. We're looking at what's coming, but we need more details to understand whether we need to act, to invest, or or react somehow. So
thank you, Vaidotas. Per, would you like to add something on digital currencies? You are muted, I'm afraid. Is it on our side?
I'm muted on my computer. Can you hear me now?
Now, very well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yes, I can certainly add something. It was already touched upon earlier that it's very important here to differentiate between the CBDCs and the private initiatives that are out there. As I mentioned in my presentation, we do not think that digital currencies are a suitable investment for consumers today. Too many risks associated with them, and we are working to keep them out of the financial system. And the other reason for this is the environmental impact. I mean, if we look at all the talk about sustainability at this fintech conference, and proof of work cryptocurrencies are just not the way forward, not even in sustainable manner or in an anti-money laundering part as well. If you see the news just the other day that the FBI could retrieve some bitcoins from criminal activity, and the Bitcoin just collapses 10%. That is not a very sound reaction from a financial asset that banks should. So the bank should really stay away from this. Is our message.
Thank you, Per. And if I may add on a question on this same thing, and there was an article in Wall Street Journal, or an opinion piece, a couple of weeks ago, which labeled very straight in the face, ban Bitcoin. Do you think that these private digital currencies are approaching their end? And I know this is a question which may impact the markets, but so be it. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can go first on that since I've already touched upon it. As I said, we have warned consumers for the risks of these assets for several years. And of course, now when the European Commission have the MiCA regulation out, we're working locally just to try to make sure that this regulation is as good as it can be. But it's not going to address all of the issues that we have with cryptocurrencies. So we're going to keep on doing our warnings towards consumers and trying to keep these so-called assets outside of the official financial system.
Yes, somebody else?
I could just compliment that I think that banning is no longer possible. So there were a lot of countries and regions that tried to ban, right? So for example, Middle East does not allow cryptocurrencies right now. What we see China is doing just in recent weeks, they started to try to eliminate Bitcoin, which is take the sort of Bitcoin miners off the grid, the electricity grid. If they see there's a high electricity usage, so this is how they can pinpoint that there's kind of Bitcoin mining happening. And so these are the sort of the attempts around the world, but what Europe has already admitted that you cannot dismiss them anymore. So the only way to deal with them is just to regulate them. And that's, I think, the road which is going to be followed also in other countries.
Yeah, so are you able to regulate them at the Bank of Lithuania?
So far, hardly, I would say. But I think currencies like Bitcoin might be also facing some competition from other currencies that are being created based on some kind of assets, so like stable coins and so on, and they might prove much more stable in the future, and consumers might shift towards these stable coins. Stable coins like Facebook is proposing right now and so on, so this might shift their behavior towards them. But I think I can just complement what our speakers just said, that it's the user requires to have all the information about the risk of it, and the central bank role is to provide this information, inform that investing in cryptocurrencies is not the most sort of is a very risky business, I would say.
Thank you. Vaida, would you like to add something?
Not much to add, definitely. This is the path to go. But I would say that traditional banks actually have this value of being regulated, and this is one of the biggest differences from this unregulated area. So I think, the next step probably would be the regulation, and it's going to be a tricky one.
Thank you. More questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Hello, first of all, thank you very much for presentations. And I have a question. In the beginning, it was named that one of the challenge is the lack of human capital, of professionals, right? And then with all digitalization, we see as well that sustainability is becoming more and more important. Are there any initiatives you are foreseeing, especially for Lithuania, for Baltic markets, on ensuring this sustainability of labor market to work in finance sector? Because basically it means that we need more and more professionals to fuel and to lead this digital transformation in financial sector. Thank you.
Who would like to answer that one?
I can start this time.
Vaidotai, please.
It's quite high on agenda, this sustainability topic for all the banks, and especially the ones which are ECB regulated, because we had to fulfill quite a big questionnaire right now, provide action plans, how we're going to tackle the sustainability topic in the nearest future. I would say there are not that big demand of the human capital. I would say even, we're investing a lot into not only for the client solutions, but also for the internal efficiency tools, because traditional banks still have some legacy processes, procedures, banking systems, you name it. Infrastructures are quite heavy. So this is how it would become combined path. So we need to take away those things which are very technical, not really creating an added value, not really interesting for young people to do, and then focus that energy towards new things which is coming. We call it like a new AML, right? This whole sustainability topic, at least for the banking industry, it's starting now. In 5 years, probably all the clients will know about it, will fulfill the new questionnaires, and will be monitored, scored by this topic as well. So, long answer probably.
Yeah, thank you, Vaidotai.
I can just add that regarding the labor, I think Nordic banks are one of the most efficient banks in Europe, and that's why they are one of the most profitable ones, and that's why they survived this post-financial crisis environment in a very healthy manner, I would say, and we are now very good capitalized and so on. So this efficiency trend, I think, will have to sustain itself, because otherwise the growth of the competition from fintechs and big techs, we will just eat up into banks' profits if banks don't remain efficient, and also in terms of labor. So I think that's what I would have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Eivilė.
I will add also that so of course there is a lack of professionals, and many employers are stressing that, and of course what we have in the region, that is decreasing population, but so at least the banking sector is the one that pays the highest salaries on average, and they have a lot of awards to be being best employers, and I think that's puts them a little bit in a better position with the other companies to be able to attract a professional also from university and later to keep them. Now, but talking about sort of looking ahead, I think the answer to your question would be really the same digitalization, which allows to employ people from all around the world. So you don't have to anymore live and work in the same location, and this is what, for example, neobanks are. Exactly, our member has this trend to have people across the globe independently where they live. They can live in Bahamas with a sand dollar. So I think that is going to be a solution for that. And on top, the banking sector in the Baltic region is basically, well, regional. These are regional banks, regional groups. So they already are organized in the way that one person is responsible across the Baltic countries independently. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Per, would you like to add something?
Well, it could be worth just mentioning that we are now in the early parts of this journey with sustainability within the financial sector. A lot have happened over the past couple of years, and this year even more so with the taxonomy and the disclosure regulation. But also, banks and other financial institutions are gonna have to incorporate ESG within the core businesses. So this is not going to be a fringe part of a bank anymore. It's going to be in the core parts of business. It's going to be on the credit risk assessment side, especially in the risk assessment side as well. So we're going to need a lot more people who are capable of making those assessments. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Pretty much the same as we did with the digitalizations a few years back. I mean, we've managed that. We've got the talent in our organizations now. We're going to need to do the same thing with ESG moving forward.
Thank you. Well, the time is running really fast. Is there one last question? I don't see any hands, so I will ask one last question. But we discussed about both opportunities and challenges, and this was really interesting. But still, the banks, they seem to be facing more regulation. This means, more requirements, more limitations, all sorts of sustainability and others. The parties who are competing with the banks don't face all of those. Isn't this raising a risk that, well, the banking sector will be super safe, super friendly, very responsible, but getting smaller and smaller? I don't know, a couple of sentences from each, maybe?
Yeah, I guess there is a reason why banks are so much regulated, and one of the reasons is that they control the money of all the individuals. And of course, everyone wants their money to be safe. But yeah, the competition from those who don't have a deposits but have their own funding is increasing, and we are not that much regulated as investment funds, big techs, as fintech companies, due to their own reasons. So I would say yes, this regulatory arbitrage which exists, and it does not necessarily exist within the country. It might exist across the countries. It might actually be for the benefit of these other non-bank financial institutions. And European Central Bank and European Systemic Risk Board thinks about that a lot. And especially in light of this growing shadow banking sector, we think how to actually, what policies to implement to maintain this risk and have some regulation on them too.
Thank you. Eivilė?
Yes, so that is indeed true that the regulation for the banks is kind of, I usually compare it with the pharmacy. I think that's the same level of heaviness of regulation for pharmacy and the banks. And indeed, some other sectors, financial subsectors, have a bit less regulation, and this is our joint position, not only in Lithuania, but across Europe. Same risks, same rule, same regulation. This is, I think, the golden rule that should be followed. Now, answering your question on whether smaller banks are going to start dominating, I think currently I don't see this trend. I would not expect it to dominate in the next years. And what I see that regulators like European Banking Authority, what usually after crisis, what they're doing, they are sort of pushing the market to mergers and acquisitions, because this is a good way to save the weaker participants, and in this way sort of to improve the health of the banking sector.
Thank you. Vaidotas?
I think we're a good example that I showed that we're kind of a traditional bank with the fintech insight, I would say. But yeah, the regulation is completely different, and yeah, you saw it. I think very recently, one of the bigger banks in Lithuania, it just says that no mistakes are allowed for a traditional bank. Either you're going to be punished quite heavily. So this is always an area where we have to really manage. So I think all the answers are very valid, and more regulation will come for the smaller players, or we will see more and more partnerships for traditional banks and fintechs.
Thank you. Per, would you like to add something?
Well, I would just like to turn it around a little bit. You can also say that more regulation creates more trust, and finance is definitely in the business of trust. So with more and better regulation that is coming now with the EU digital strategy, I think the financial institutions will need to seize the opportunity here and actually move forward instead of just thinking of regulation as a negative thing. So it can create more trust and on the next level, more efficient markets. So there's definitely opportunities here for the players, both new and incumbents, if they move on in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to invite you to join me to thank the panel. Thank you, Vaidotas. Thank you, Eivilė. Thank you, Jokūbai. And thank you, Per. Thank you for joining. It was really interesting.